Hello, I'm Michael Della, Monaca, and this is The Bottom Line. We, over the summer and into the fall, we had a whole lot of political candidates on. We had some of the local elections going on. And now we're resuming sort of some of the social issues that we sometimes talk about, and some of the other hot button issues. So for that, we have a very special guest, and two special guests, but one is, should be familiar to longtime viewers of the show. He was actually the second ever guest on the show, Dennis Wirth. He is a stand-up comic. He's a restaurant manager, stand-up comic, and he talked last time about parental alienation, issues with child custody issues, father's rights issues, and we're joined with Dennis with Mary Ellen Rinaldi, and also stand-up comedian. She has an interesting perspective because she's seen the other side of it, as well as she's experienced it herself somewhat remotely. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then we'll talk about maybe some of the ways that you can, sometimes how you use comedy to communicate some of these issues sometimes, as well as talk about what you have planned for the future otherwise. So welcome to the show, first of all. Welcome back to Dennis, and welcome to Mary Ellen. So I'll start with you, Dennis. Last time you were on, it was a couple of years ago, okay? And you talked about issues you've had with the courts, issues you've had with your son's mother, and just the issue of father's rights, parental alienation. You helped me break down some of the stereotypes associated with that, because people, and I'll just sort of recap a little bit of what we talked about last time. People hear this whole idea, or this whole topic of parental alienation, or they hear this whole father's rights. You see these signs on like overpasses, and you see these scrawls on Facebook, on social media or whatnot. And the immediate reaction, and I have to admit I'm not immune to it, and before I sort of learned a little more about it, my immediate reaction, right or wrong, was, oh geez, they're just whining, come on. I mean, my experience in the courts is well, the judges in the probate courts, at least with the things I do in my profession, even-handed, whatnot, come on, they're just whining. There's got to be an issue. There's got to be something going on there. And tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why that isn't true.
It gets more to the point of disbelief. I don't know about whining, but I mean, you're brought up and you think it's going to be a fair country, and it's anything but fair. And when no matter what you do, you go right, you go left, no matter which way you go, you're not given a fair shake. It gets to the point you just throw your hands up and say, I can't believe, this even happens. I mean, the first episode we did together, we talked more about the financial issue, about, how they use the children for profit rather than what's best for the parents. And, this time I wanted to get a little bit more into a personal, thing about parental alienation. Going on almost 2.5 years since I've heard from my son. And him and I are a victim of parental alienation. And it's tough because, when all you do is love your child since the day they were born, and then they turn on you, it's a very tough thing for the child and you to deal with. And it certainly extends to other family. And I've reached out to them, and it seems, no matter what you do, like I said, you go right, you go left, no matter which way you go, they've been brainwashed, and it starts at a young age. And I'll tell you, the one thing I've learned is everybody says, take the high road, take the high road, take the high road. And I always thought I was doing the right thing, taking the high road. But come to find out, I did the research a little bit too late. But you need to defend yourself, no matter how young they are. If one parent is bashing you, you don't just take the high road, and, you need to defend yourself. And I made the mistake and didn't, and he ended up believing what was being put in his head.
How old is your son?
He's 22.
He's 22. And you say this has been really bad for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, is this something that sort of built up? Was it kind of bad before that?
Oh yeah, it's been bad since the day we broke up. I mean, I had to hear from a 5-year-old child, Daddy, can you explain to me what child support means? I had to hear from an 8-year-old child, Daddy, you better give Mommy her money. Got to the point, it was a 19-year-old child. The last letter I heard from my son was, you pay an incredibly small amount of child support compared to most dads. You should give Mom more money. You don't give her enough money. my sister's other father willingly gives mom more money. And I was just blown away reading this. You know, why would you, you know, and I always told him, any problems me and your mother have, it's between me and her. She's your mother, you love her no matter what. And this is what I had to hear back, and I didn't defend myself, and unfortunately that's what he ended up believing.
Well, that's the thing, and so because you hear from a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old, you know, concepts of child support and giving money and whatnot, and obviously, you know,
That's not something a 5-year-old normally concerns himself with unless it's
out of the
being put in
mouths
his
of
head.
babes,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, you kind of know you joke about it or whatnot. You hear somebody's kid talk about some sort of adult issue, and you're thinking to yourself in the back of your head, "Oh, okay, I know what their parents are talking about because they're parroting what they hear." So is that what you feel was going on there?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was word for word what would have been coming out of her mouth. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I know I didn't tell him how much child support I paid, so how does he know how much I pay? You know, I mean,
And is it things that your ex? It was things that your ex told you directly, I would assume.
directly, right? It was word for word what
Yeah.
was coming out of her mouth. Right?
Yeah.
It's been put in his head, and
Yeah.
so
And
defend yourself out there. Do defend yourself. Don't take the high road. That is the wrong move. Although you think it's the right move, it's not.
yeah, well, and and we'll recap maybe some of the things we talked about before, but just for anybody who didn't see the show or or don't remember, I take it you've had court battles with your ex regarding the amount of child support or whatnot, or I mean, has there been actual judicial involvement?
Yeah, we went through the courthouse so many times. I mean, we probably both spent more money on lawyers than it would have, you know, cost us just to say, all right, forget about it. But I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the child is constantly in a tug of war between both parents because you each have different views on what's best for your child. And, you know, most parents don't just walk away from their children. They want to be a part of their life, and the courts, you know, won't give them the time of day. So it becomes a tug of war, and unfortunately, the child's caught right in the middle of that. And, you know, it's easy to say put the child above, you know, your own personal feelings, but that only works if both parents do it. And if one parent don't stick to that, it becomes a big, messy battle, and I've been through it.
And in dealing with the courts, have you seen favorable treatment towards your ex versus yourself? I mean, what are you
Oh,
seeing?
sure, yeah. Even the first lawyer I had, you know, hey, you're a father, you know, the system is what it is, you know, you got to accept what's going to happen. It's like, well, I don't want to accept being, you know, my son and me being treated unfairly, you know. They're telling you need to accept less time. Well, we can't go into court and say you love your child unless you give her, you know, all kinds of money, you know, and all I ever wanted was a fair deal. So it ended up to the point, you know, I got visitation early on, and later on he wanted to spend more time with me. I ended up getting 50-50 custody, and even that I still had to pay her money, even though he was at my house half of the time. Cost just as much to live at my house as hers, but everybody had a different idea. I mean, it got to the point, the last letter I got, that at 21 years old, he was mad that he had to get a job and pay for part of his college tuition. And apparently his mother said, well, if your dad had give us more money, you wouldn't have to work at 21 years old, which 21 years old, you pretty much should have a job, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, it's basically everything, you know, she puts in, it's your fault, your fault, your fault. And that's what he ended up believing.
Yeah. And he lives locally around in this Worcester County?
He's in UMass Amherst during
Yeah.
the college year. He stays on campus. Then during the summer, he stays at his mom's house. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like it's far away distance-wise. I mean, this is still somebody who's close to
yeah,
you
yeah,
geographically,
sure.
who could come see you, or or if you had some sort of relationship, you could hang out, you could be together. So
It's sad to see the amount of hate that's in his heart, you know, towards,
Yeah.
you know, and it even extends to my mother, who's nothing but love him, wasn't involved financially. He won't have
Yeah.
nothing to do with my mother either. Just
yeah,
it extends to the extended family. All the hate that's been put in his head. It's tough to see.
yeah. And so it seems like a shift. It goes from sort of these jabs or comments or things he would make to you, but yet he was still spending a lot of time with you, and it's sort of evolved now to less of a probably, you know, money's the root of a lot of things, I suppose.
Root of all evil.
but it's almost less of a money focus and more towards the alienation focus, because now it's okay. Now it's, I'm not going to complain about money to you. I'm just not going to talk to you at all.
Yeah, it's an extreme for sure, and it's tough to see. He was late from school one day, and I went out trying to find him, and I seen him walking home, and I picked him up, and he says, well, you don't care about me anyway. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've done nothing but love you. But that's what's been put in his head. And, like I said, when you hear it from a young age, you know, you're going to start to believe that, and it's instilled in your head, you know, what's been put in your brain, whether it's true or not. You know, he can't even see with his own eyes. All I've done is love him his whole life. All he believes is what's been put in his head since 5 years old or earlier than that.
And you know, for the viewers watching, you know, obviously, you know, 21-year-old adult. He's not here to defend himself. He's not here to present the other side of the story. There's always there's 3 sides to every story.
Absolutely, I'm sure you get a whole different story from their side. I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, but and you said their side. You still, your perception is they're, I don't know if in cahoots is the right word, but they are of they're of the same mindset. It's still.
Oh yeah. My ex on Facebook, you know, we weren't friends obviously, but I could see she ended up blocking me. But her last post was, you know, I paid this much for college, and you owe me this much, and you know, on Facebook she's putting this out, which you know, I'm not saying I was an angel, but I mean, we both made our mistakes. But the biggest mistake was putting our son in the middle of our battle. That was the biggest mistake there.
Yeah. So now, Mary Ellen, so welcome, and so just now you have sort of seen the, you've sort of seen the other side of it. Well, actually, it's kind of I would say the same side in that you have a stepson.
Second wife.
And you are the second wife of your husband.
Yes.
And you have a stepson. So you've sort of seen what can happen, you know, as well with issues of, well, sort of it's a son as well, stepson, similar to Dennis.
Son, yeah.
And,
father and son relationship.
Yeah. And now, in your case, does the mom have primary custody like this? Or?
No. When I came into the picture, my son, I call him my son, I asked him before we were married if I could refer to him as my son, and I do. I don't have any other children, so that's why I say my son. He has a mom and he has me. Very clear with those pictures. But when I went in innocent. I was like, da-da-da-da, I meet this guy, he has a child, okay. And the stuff that Matt would say to me about stuff his mother said about his dad, he never said it to the father. So right away I'm thinking stuff like, oh, your dad doesn't have to teach you to be a man, my boyfriend can teach you to be a man. And I'm like, wow. But as a stepmom, I had to be careful about what I said. So I made a little place in my car where he could tell me anything he wanted, nobody would hear it. So that's how I would find out. So I would have to work with my husband to help him understand what was going on, because he had no clue.
How old was your stepson when you first came into
When I first met him, he was 7.
I see.
We got married, he was 8 and then 11 when we were married.
Okay.
By the time we were married, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was the stuff coming over. He would tell me that his grandparents would say, because of your father, the mother's boyfriend said, I have a lot of money, but I'm not going to give you any because of your father. But their case, it backfired.
Okay.
Because he was done hearing about his father, and he said, I'm done. And he walked away from her.
So yeah, so this was sort of the opposite in that this was an exercise. Again, when I speak of this, we're talking about opinions, perspectives.
Totally.
People aren't here to defend the other side, to defend themselves. But the perception is, okay, there was this, I'm going to attempt to turn you against your father. This one blew up on him. Versus Dennis's case, which it succeeded, so to speak.
I think it does eventually, though, because what happens is they grow up and they realize what is really going on. But I remember a long time ago, I had a friend of mine who was a male, who was older, and we were somewhere, and he says, oh, my father left because of me. And I thought to myself, your father left because of you? Yeah, when I was born, my father left because of me. And I said to him, that's impossible. Yeah. That's it. Think about that. In his whole life, he carried that. His father left because of him. And I said to him, he left because of your mother. A man doesn't leave a child, they leave the woman.
That's what's put into their head.
And it was what has been put into his head. And this is an educated guy who was bright, had a career, and that was a aha moment for him. I saw it. I went,
That can be worse, by the way, because
Absolutely.
that's much worse, because at least, look, it's like, it's one
Absolutely.
thing to turn the kid against the adult because, well, the mother doesn't like the adult, the father or whatever. If this is what the child is, there's a friend of
grown man.
yours.
Yeah.
It was a friend of yours, you would say,
Yeah.
a friend, yeah. If this is, if this is accurate, what he's recounting,
Yeah.
that's even worse, because that's the mother trying to turn the blame
Onto
for the
child.
dissolution of the relationship on the child.
child.
That's which is even, that's a step worse.
Yeah.
That's a step further. So in your case,
Yeah.
it kind of backfired. So your son now, so your husband now, and you have primary custody of
Well,
your
he's
stepson now,
25.
or? Oh, he's 25 now.
Graduated
Okay,
college.
They make their own decisions,
All right.
They
and
do
they
make
think
their own
they're their own decisions. They're not.
And the ironic part of it all is now, I was very lucky because I had parents who were not emotionally involved but could guide me. And my father used to say, keep your mouth shut, don't say a word. And I'm Italian. I'm like,
Yeah.
You're ready to speak your mind.
yeah. One day he came home and he had some exercise stuff. He goes, oh, here, my mother said you could use this.
Oh, jeez.
No, she said to exercise. And I just laughed.
Yeah.
And he's innocent. He's 7 years old, 8 years old. Here you go, you can have this. 9 years old, here.
Yeah.
Oh, my mother said this and that. And I would be like, okay. But I knew what I was dealing with.
Yeah.
My husband, however, no, he did fight. And I got to say,
How do you see that it affects your husband? I mean, and you
he
talk about
fought.
your-
My husband's a fighter. My
on a
husband,
person, on like a personal level, like I mean, how does it
he used to just come right back and say to Matt,
Yeah.
disbelief?
disbelief. But they had a unique relationship. Remember, my husband had custody. So there was that piece too. And it's unique. But I mean, overall, parents, I think the worst thing you could ever do to your child is turn them against someone who loves them. We're people. We're not perfect.
Human
We all
beings,
make
right.
mistakes. We, as a parent, you try every single day to go, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? And you struggle with it. And then to have someone in the background tapping in to a source that child could go to if they're in trouble, if they need someone. And I always used to say, my dad used to say to me, they grow up.
Yeah.
They grow up.
I hope your dad's right.
My dad has always been right.
All right,
Yeah, he always said, they grow up.
Right.
And I saw it, and Matt, for 4 years, had no relationship with her. And ironically, she sent me a letter about parental alienation. I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Calling the kettle black. huh?
Yeah, but however, that was my point where I had to make a decision, because I could have ignored it, but I had to do what was right for my son and put that relationship back together. And trust me, that wasn't easy. You have a child that loves you and you're in a family and everything's great. But I had to do a lot of soul searching to go, my heart of hearts, I know that relationship needs to be mended because it's an important relationship. And I did go to him and say, she's been reaching out, and do it. And he's like, I'll think about it. But he did.
Put your child above yourself.
You
That's what
have
gotta
to.
do.
And it's selfish that you don't.
See, Dennis, there is a point where taking the high road can be productive. You know what I mean? Because
There's
that's
no
what really.
There's no real point, though, and that's the problem. It's a human emotion.
Right.
Where someone is totally saying things about, if he loved you, he'd give you more money. Do you know women who are divorced with children have more money than a woman who was married? They have more disposable
course,
income.
sure.
They used to say women used to marry for money, now they divorce for it.
It makes more sense to get divorced nowadays.
Yeah, it
financially.
does. And it's awful because all you're doing is tearing apart these children. Rosie O'Donnell has a documentary on, I think it was on it's Netflix or something, and it says, Don't Put Me in the Middle. And they interviewed all these children who said, don't do this to me. And if you read it, if you watch it, these children who know about child support, they know what everything, and it's so not fair to them. I didn't grow up like that.
It is. The government is trafficking our children to make profit. It's
It's
really
absolutely.
sad to think. And
So how do we fix it?
we've actually created a term, okay? I mean, this is a recognized term, parental alienation. This
Yep.
is what we've done as a society to
Yeah.
children. We have created a new disease over child support and profit. It's really sad.
What do we do to fix it?
How do you fix it?
We talk about it. You talk about it.
Awareness is the key, you know. Any cause that gets fixed, you have to spread awareness. And I'm sure if my ex sees this or my son sees this, they're not going to be happy about me doing this show while he's on there talking. Well, yeah, you know, when you throw your hands up in the air, you've been treated so unfairly, what else you do? You talk about it and hope someday it gets fixed. That's the only way it gets fixed is if you talk about it. Don't stay silent.
And also with someone else, like it's very easy when someone you love is going through a separation or a divorce, and then the wife, it's a human being. You naturally would do it. You're hurt, you've been left, you don't know what you're gonna do to automatically say to the kids, I don't know. And I would say, do not say a word about the father. And they're like, I go, do not do it. Shut your mouth. Believe me, I know it's hard. I know, I had to do it. I'd have to sit there and go, you know, we had no money. Nothing. We were struggling back to court, always to court. That was the favorite game. And
It's a big tool.
she would show up without a lawyer and we pay. But
Excuse me.
when Matt was going to college, he said to me, he had dreams to get into MIT. He was a kid. And he says, well, what is going to happen? And I said to him, you get in, that's your job. You know what our job is? To pay for it. That's our job. Your job is to get in. And he ended up going to Roger Williams, and when he was accepted there wasn't even a thought about how it was going to be paid for, except my husband and I were going, oh, he's not my husband. My husband and I were going, how are we going to do this?
They don't take into account the child support, you know, I mean.
Oh, no.
You know, that's part, you know, you're paying that money to take care of the child. No, that's free money. You got
That's
to
her
pay
money.
for everything on top of that, you know. That don't count for nothing.
But back to your question, I always make sure that when someone's in there, I say, don't do it. Don't say anything negative about that parent. Just don't. Just keep your mouth shut.
Don't bash the other parent, but if the other parent's bashing you, you do need to defend
You do
yourself.
need to.
You can't just
Which
let
is
them believe
what-
that's true.
Which is what your husband did
Oh.
in your case.
And everybody said, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And he says, I don't care. I'm not going to sit back and let anyone say anything.
Talk like that, yeah.
Now, you unfortunately have had issues yourself with
Recently.
a niece and nephew, or
Yeah.
grandniece and grandnephew,
Yeah.
where this one can be a little
Heartbreaking.
tougher because it's a similar relationship or a similar attachment, but yet there's really no, at least in theory, there are laws to sort of protect, and you can go to, as you said when we were talking before we came on, you know, in theory you could go to court and make the kid hang out with you, so to speak.
Well, to a certain age, you know, once they hit a
to a
certain
certain
age,
age.
you know, they think it's their choice, but they don't realize what's been put in their head.
They've been brainwashed.
You have a grandniece and grandnephew where you've experienced alienation. Now, on the one hand, it's not your children, but on the other hand, because it's not your children, you don't really have much of a legal remedy.
Yes.
You know, that's
the same thing with my mother. His grandmother won't talk to
Oh,
her.
yeah,
She
and
said
your
nothing to do with nothing. She don't know what to do.
I think it's
None of us do.
I'm dealing with two babies. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the father decided that because I told him the truth about who he was, that I was out. Now, mind you, I am with these children all the time, and my position was, I said, how cruel. That's a very slight form of child abuse, to turn to a 7-year-old and go, you're not going to see your aunt anymore. Nope, oh, I know. She takes you to Mystic. She took you to the park. She takes you to the museum. You go on vacation with her. She's always there for every single thing in your life. But I decided, because I am that insane, that I'm going to stop it. And I just had to, trust me, I text message and I don't do this, and try and try. But see, what I did, because see, I saw stuff with Matthew growing up, and I've seen Jacob, who is 7, from the time he was 4, because I knew what the father was. I would look at him and I would say, I'll always love you. I'll always be with you. And I'd put my head to his and I'd go, and if someday you don't see me, it's not me. Somebody's keeping me away. And he'd go, who? I go, I don't know. But if anyone tells you that I don't love you anymore, that's the person that's keeping me away. Because
They need to figure it out for themselves.
yeah, and I know he
Not
knows.
much you can do.
And for me, it's a weight game. I know that eventually they're gonna,
It's a tough waiting game too. When your child won't talk to you, it's
even these
you
children,
have
any
those
children.
nights, yeah.
I mean, I have their toys for Christmas. I have everything set up for them. And I had to close the door of the room and just go, you know, and women do it. It's the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world.
Yeah, what do you do?
Well, and everybody makes this comment, the time goes by really fast. We only have about 3 or so minutes left. So I want to give you folks an opportunity to talk about your, you do stand-up comedy.
Oh, the good stuff. Let's talk about the
well,
positive
positive stuff.
we do.
We
Yes.
And you know, you've used the stand-up comedy to sort of put up,
I do.
you know, sort of take away some of the pain, so to speak,
Yeah.
okay, on
Oh,
some of
yeah.
these issues.
Laugh at your pain.
Yeah, you have a character that you use
I
called
do,
a child support superhero.
I do a character called the Child Support Superhero. I took a class on comedy. They said, talk about your personal life stuff, and I knew all about dealing with exes and child support and divorce and parental alienation. So I do the routine called the Child Support Superhero, and amazing, after almost a lot of shows, almost every show, someone comes up to me after the show. They want to tell me their story, because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the guy, they want to talk about it, they don't know who, and I'm the guy who's doing something about it. They want to talk to me. So check out my website, www.denniswirth.webs.com. There's a link to the Child Support Superhero there. You can find them on Facebook, and I've actually started to publicize some of these stories that people are writing in and talking about it, and awareness is the key.
And you're both on Twitter as well.
I'm on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as
Mary
well, yeah.
Ellen 210. How easy.
Look it up.
Yeah.
With a name like Mary Ellen Rinaldi, you need something easy.
Yeah,
210.
yeah.
210.
Mary Ellen 210, and that's your Twitter handle. And then what's yours? What Twitter handle?
I'm under Dennis Worth again.
Dennis Wirth. Okay, all right.
It's an I, not an O. Everybody spells Worth with an O. It's W-I-R-T-H.
Okay, W-I-R-T-H.
There you go.
And then how do you convey it in your stand-up? Is it a little more subtle? I mean, is it?
It's definitely subtle,
Yeah.
more subtle. I do more of the step parent, because I also believe there's a message that when we do stand-up, somehow, somewhere, we're reaching out to someone.
Yeah.
So mine is more about being a good step parent and understanding your position. And, you know, no matter what, this is you're a step back.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that no matter what, you're a step back. It's the parents that need to be there first.
And a lot of parents don't know what to do. So when they see people like us doing comedy,
Yeah.
they want to talk to
We have
us
a lot
because they
of
don't know who
people.
else to talk to.